Assalamu alaikum friends, today I will tell you a heartbreaking story of a young tailor girl whose life was filled with struggles and pain. This girl, despite her hardships, remained steadfast and hardworking. But fate had written something else for her. What happened to her that shook the entire village? To know the full story, make sure to watch this video until the end. Many people today face similar struggles, and this story carries a deep lesson for all of us. In a small village, far from the city, there lived a girl named Amina with her mother. Amina's father had passed away when she was very young, leaving her mother to take care of everything. To support her family, Amina learned tailoring from an early age. She would sit for hours, sewing clothes and earning whatever little money she could. She never complained about her fate and always had a smile on her face. Her mother often said, "My daughter is a blessing, she never lets me feel the absence of her father." Amina was known in the village for her excellent stitching. Women from different parts of the village came to her to get their clothes made. She was not only skilled but also honest in her work. However, despite her hard work, their financial condition never improved. Some days, they barely had anything to eat. Even then, Amina never lost hope and kept pushing forward, believing that Allah would make things better one day. One day, a wealthy woman from the town came to Amina's house with an urgent request. "Amina, I need you to make a beautiful dress for my daughter's wedding. I will pay you double your usual amount." Amina's eyes lit up with hope. The extra money could help them buy food and medicines for her sick mother. But when Amina saw the design, her heart sank. The dress was revealing, and Amina had always refused to stitch such clothes. "Forgive me, madam," Amina said politely. "I cannot make this dress." The woman was furious. "You foolish girl. Do you not want to escape this poverty? I am offering you money, and yet you refuse." Amina remained firm in her decision. She had always believed that dignity and faith were more valuable than wealth. The woman left in anger, warning Amina that she would regret her decision. That night, Amina sat beside her mother, who was running a high fever. Tears welled up in her eyes as she wondered how long she could continue struggling like this. Days passed, and Amina's struggles only increased. Her mother's health worsened, and she could not afford the medicine. One fateful evening, while returning from the market, Amina fainted on the road due to hunger and exhaustion. A kind neighbor helped her home, but it was clear that Amina's body was weak from overwork and starvation. One stormy night, as Amina was sewing under the dim light of a candle, her hand suddenly stopped moving. Her vision blurred, and she collapsed onto the floor. When the neighbors found out, they rushed to help, but it was too late. Amina had passed away from weakness and malnutrition. Her mother's cries echoed through the village. The villagers, who had always admired Amina's honesty and resilience, were heartbroken. As the news spread, the rich woman who had once insulted Amina also heard about her tragic death. Guilt weighed heavily on her heart. She realized that Amina had died with her dignity intact, while she herself had lived a life of wealth without values. She decided to donate money to the poor in Amina's name, but it was too late to bring her back. Amina's story became a lesson for the entire village. She taught everyone that dignity and faith are greater than wealth and luxury. Even in her death, Amina remained a symbol of honesty and perseverance. Friends, life is full of struggles, but we must never compromise on our values. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more such heart-touching stories. Until next time, take care and remember, honesty is the greatest wealth. Amina's story did not just end with her death. Her mother, left alone with the grief of losing her only daughter, found herself in an even worse situation. With no one to take care of her and no source of income, she was completely helpless. The villagers, who had once admired Amina's work, now felt guilty for not helping her enough when she was alive. Some neighbors tried to support her mother by bringing food, but the pain of losing Amina was too great for the old woman to bear. She would sit by the sewing machine, running her fingers over the fabric her daughter once worked on, tears silently falling from her eyes. Her health deteriorated, and within a few months, she, too, passed away. The villagers arranged her burial beside Amina's grave. Years passed, but the story of Amina continued to be told in the village. Mothers would tell their daughters about her resilience, and seamstresses would remember her honesty. A small monument was later built in her honor, and every year, villagers gathered to pray for her soul. Amina's legacy was not just in her sewing but in the lesson she left behind, that no amount of wealth is worth losing one's dignity and faith. Even in the hardest of times, she chose to stand by her values, and though her life was short, her impact remained forever. Friends, this story reminds us that we must always choose honesty and integrity, no matter how difficult life gets. If you found this story meaningful, do share it with others so that Amina's lesson continues to inspire people. May Allah grant her peace and grant us all the strength to remain steadfast in our values. In a small, quiet town, there lived a young girl named Aisha. She was known for her kindness and skill in tailoring. From a very young age, she had learned the craft from her mother, who had been a seamstress herself. Aisha's father had passed away when she was just a child, and since then, her mother had taken on the responsibility of providing for their family. Life was not easy, but through patience and hard work, they managed to survive. Aisha's mother taught her that honesty and integrity were the most important values, and Aisha lived by those principles. She spent most of her days working on her sewing machine, creating beautiful dresses for women in the village. She took pride in her work and never compromised on quality. However, despite her dedication, she earned just enough to get by. One day, a wealthy woman from the neighboring village came to Aisha's small shop with her 2 daughters. She carried an expensive piece of fabric and requested Aisha to sew elaborate dresses for them. Aisha examined the fabric and said she would do her best. The woman smiled and told Aisha that she would be well compensated if the dresses were completed quickly. Aisha agreed, but as she measured the fabric, she realized there would be some leftover pieces. She knew that it was common for tailors to keep these scraps, but her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Always return what belongs to others." Aisha carefully wrapped the extra fabric and handed it back to the woman, who was surprised by her honesty. She thanked Aisha and left, leaving behind a generous payment. Aisha's mother was proud of her daughter's honesty and prayed for her success. As time went on, Aisha's reputation grew. More people came to her for their sewing needs, and soon, she had more work than she could handle. However, despite her busy schedule, she never neglected her prayers and always treated her customers with respect. One evening, as she was finishing a dress, a woman entered her shop in distress. The woman explained that her daughter was getting married the next day, and the tailor she had hired had failed to complete the wedding dress. She pleaded with Aisha to help her. Aisha looked at the unfinished dress and realized it would take her the entire night to complete it. Though she was exhausted, she couldn't refuse. She assured the woman that the dress would be ready by morning. Aisha worked tirelessly throughout the night, her fingers aching from the constant stitching. As dawn approached, she completed the final touches. The wedding dress was ready. When the woman returned, she was overwhelmed with gratitude. She paid Aisha double the agreed amount and blessed her for her kindness. Aisha, despite her exhaustion, felt fulfilled knowing that she had helped someone in need. However, her long hours and lack of rest began to take a toll on her health. She often ignored her fatigue, focusing instead on her work, unaware of the consequences it would bring. One day, Aisha suddenly collapsed while working on her sewing machine. Her mother rushed to her side, panic-stricken. She called for help, and the neighbors quickly gathered. A doctor was summoned, and after examining Aisha, he shook his head solemnly. He explained that Aisha had been overworking herself and her body had become weak. She needed rest and proper care. Aisha's mother was devastated. She had always wanted Aisha to take care of herself, but her daughter had been too dedicated to her work. Aisha tried to assure her mother that she would be fine, but deep down, she knew that her condition was serious. Days passed, and Aisha's health deteriorated. She could no longer sew like before, and her shop remained closed. The villagers, who admired Aisha's kindness and hard work, visited her often, bringing food and offering prayers for her recovery. But Aisha grew weaker with each passing day. One night, she held her mother's hand and whispered, "Mother, if I don't wake up tomorrow, please forgive me for any pain I've caused you." Her mother's heart shattered at those words, and she begged Aisha to stay strong. But fate had already decided. By morning, Aisha had breathed her last. The village mourned the loss of the kind-hearted tailor girl. People gathered for her funeral, speaking of her generosity and honesty. Her mother was inconsolable, unable to comprehend that her daughter was gone forever. After the burial, the villagers returned to their homes, leaving Aisha's mother alone in her grief. The house felt empty without Aisha's presence. Her sewing machine sat untouched, a painful reminder of the daughter she had lost. As the days went by, Aisha's mother found solace in prayer, believing that her daughter was now at peace. One night, Aisha's mother had a dream. In her dream, she saw Aisha standing in a beautiful garden, dressed in white, smiling. She looked peaceful and happy. Aisha's mother called out to her, and Aisha replied, "Mother, do not grieve for me. I am in a place where there is no pain, no sorrow. I am at peace." When Aisha's mother woke up, she felt a sense of comfort wash over her. Though she still missed her daughter, she found strength in the belief that Aisha was in a better place. Aisha's story became a legend in the village. People spoke of her honesty, kindness, and dedication. Many young girls were inspired by her, and they vowed to uphold the same values in their lives. Though Aisha was no longer physically present, her legacy lived on in the hearts of those who knew her. The little tailor girl who had once struggled to make ends meet had left behind a lesson that would be remembered for generations, that honesty, hard work, and kindness are the true riches of life. She was born into a poor family in a small village where opportunities were scarce, but dreams were abundant. Her name was Amina, a bright young girl with nimble fingers and a heart full of hope. From a very young age, she watched her mother struggle to put food on the table, stitching clothes for the villagers to make a living. Amina admired her mother's dedication and promised herself that one day she would become the best tailor in the village and lift her family out of poverty. As she grew older, her passion for sewing only deepened. She would take scraps of fabric and carefully stitch them together, creating tiny dresses for her dolls. The villagers noticed her talent and soon began bringing her clothes to mend. Though she was still young, her skill surpassed that of many experienced tailors. The rhythmic sound of her sewing machine became the melody of her life, filling the small hut with a sense of purpose and determination. Despite her talent, life was not easy for Amina. She faced many struggles, including the constant burden of poverty. Her father had passed away when she was a child, leaving her mother to raise her and her younger siblings alone. There were days when they barely had enough to eat, yet Amina never complained. Instead, she worked harder, determined to support her family. Her hands were always busy, stitching clothes by day and studying by night under the dim light of a lantern. She knew that education was her only chance at a better life, but the weight of responsibility often pulled her away from her studies. Still, she persevered, hoping that one day, she would be able to provide her siblings with the opportunities she never had. As Amina's reputation as a skilled tailor grew, she began receiving more work. Villagers would come from far and wide, eager to have their clothes made by her. She took great pride in her work, ensuring that every stitch was perfect. However, with success came jealousy. Some of the older tailors in the village saw her as a threat and tried to sabotage her business. They spread rumors about her work, claiming that she used cheap materials and that her stitches would not hold. At first, Amina was heartbroken. She had always been kind to everyone and could not understand why they would want to bring her down. But she refused to let their words break her spirit. She continued working with even more dedication, proving through her craftsmanship that her work spoke for itself. One day, a wealthy merchant from the city visited the village. He was impressed by Amina's skill and offered her a job at his textile shop. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, one that could change her family's fate forever. But accepting the job meant leaving her mother and siblings behind. She struggled with the decision, torn between her dreams and her responsibilities. In the end, she chose her family, believing that they needed her more than she needed success. Though the decision was difficult, she never regretted it. She continued sewing, her dreams still alive in her heart. As the years passed, Amina's hard work finally paid off. She saved enough money to open her own small tailoring shop in the village. It was a modest space, but it was hers. She filled it with colorful fabrics and neatly arranged sewing tools, creating a warm and welcoming environment. The villagers, who had once doubted her, now flocked to her shop, eager to have their clothes made by the best tailor in the village. Amina's shop became a symbol of hope, especially for young girls who aspired to achieve their dreams despite the odds. She began teaching them how to sew, passing on the skills that had given her a purpose in life. But fate had other plans. Just when everything seemed to be going well, tragedy struck. Amina fell ill. At first, she dismissed it as exhaustion, believing that a few days of rest would cure her. But her condition worsened, and soon, she could no longer walk. The doctor diagnosed her with a severe illness, one that required expensive treatment. She had spent years saving every penny to build her business, but now, all her earnings were being drained by medical bills. The villagers, grateful for all she had done, came together to support her. They donated money, brought her food, and took care of her shop in her absence. But despite their best efforts, her condition deteriorated. Amina's mother sat by her bedside, holding her daughter's frail hands. She wept, remembering all the sacrifices Amina had made for their family. She prayed day and night, hoping for a miracle. Amina, though weak, still managed to smile, assuring her mother that everything would be all right. But deep down, she knew that her time was running out. She only had one regret, that she would not be able to see her siblings grow up, that she would not be there to guide them through life. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Amina took her last breath. The village mourned the loss of a girl who had given them so much. Her small shop stood as a testament to her hard work and resilience, a place where dreams were stitched together with love and determination. Her mother and siblings carried forward her legacy, ensuring that her efforts were not in vain. Though Amina was gone, her spirit lived on in the hearts of those she had touched. She had been more than just a tailor, she had been a symbol of perseverance, kindness, and selflessness. Her story became an inspiration for generations to come, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, one could rise above and leave behind a legacy of hope. In the quiet hum of a sewing machine, in the intricate stitches of a garment, her memory lived on, whispering to those who dared to dream that anything was possible with hard work and faith.